Players to put in your lineups, players to avoid for this weekend's games right now on Fantasy Football Today Express. What's up? Welcome. We've got 4 games. On Saturday, we've got the Bills and the Broncos and the Niners at the Seahawks. Sunday, Texans at Patriots, Rams at Bears. And we've got Jamey Eisenberg here to give you some DFS tips. What's up, Jamey?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to the games. And you ready to get going here with some players you like? What do you think the top stacks should be?
I think the obvious stacks are probably going to be in the Chicago Rams game. Hopefully the weather is not horrible, but you look at these two defenses, they're the most favorable matchups aside from maybe San Francisco, but they're also two of the best offenses still remaining. So, the Rams are obvious. You can stack Stafford with either of his receivers. If you want to go a little bit cheaper, you go Davante Adams. I have a bunch of lineups on the site on cbssports.com for each day and then the full slate. And so in looking at the Rams-Bears game, I have one lineup where I have Stafford, Puka, Davante Adams, and Colby Parkinson. Let's just go crazy. And then you can counter that with Loveland, play 2 tight ends. You counter it with Burden. You can play DeAndre Swift because I think he's playing well right now. Rams run defense has not been as good as it has been earlier this season. So there's lots of different ways you can go. Caleb Williams and Colton Loveland's an easy and probably most obvious stack just based on how Loveland has performed and the Rams defense or lack thereof. Luther Burden, DJ Moore's had some big plays in the playoffs, as we've seen, big plays down the stretch. Odunze is a little tough to trust, but he did have 6 targets in his first game back after being out for 5 games with a foot injury. So there's just lots of ways you can go with that. But there's certainly other matchups that you can take advantage of or, maybe hope to take advantage of in some tough defensive situations. We could talk about that as we go.
Right. Well, some matchups you could take advantage of would be maybe RJ Harvey against the Bills run defense, right?
That's one. 100%. I think it's pretty clear Harvey's the lead running back for Denver since J.K. Dobbins' injury in Week 10. He closed the season playing very strong from a fantasy perspective. Didn't run the ball very well, but was involved in the passing game. And as we saw last week, between Bachel Tutin and Travis Etienne, they seemed like they were going to have huge games. Jacksonville got away from the run, I think, a little bit too soon. So Sean Payton probably won't do that as much or as soon. So Harvey's a great play, great price. There are some interesting running back plays here. You look at Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, hopefully those guys play well. McCaffrey to me is a little tough to trust just because Seattle's defense is playing so well right now and they'll key in on stopping McCaffrey. And whether they're successful or not, I think it's just going to be tough for him at his price point. James Cook, probably same thing against Denver, as we talked about in the full-length episode. Denver's run defense probably not as good as it was earlier this season. James Cook, clearly one of the best running backs in the league. So if you want to spend the money on those two guys, I get it. But I think you look at Zach Charbonnet against the 49ers, their middle linebacker situation still very bad. Defense has not been great against the run at times this season. And Charbonnet, as we know, he's the goal line option. And if he gets more work, then Ken Walker could be an absolute stud. Ramondre Stevenson's role in the passing game has been fantastic. Tough matchup against Houston, but I think he's worth a look. So those 3 running backs from a cost perspective in terms of Harvey, Charbonnet, and Stevenson are 3 of my favorite plays for this week.
Charbonnet, Stevenson, and Harvey. Yeah. Okay. Which players do you like in the 49ers Seahawks game?
So JSN is obvious. I think you want to play him. Had a good game. I think it was 7 catches for 84 yards, something in that range. The last time these two teams met. San Francisco's secondary is certainly beatable, and the pass rush really is not tough, as we know. I think if you want to be cheap at quarterback, Sam Darnold is a great option if you can get past, oh my God, is Sam Darnold in the playoffs? But San Francisco's defense, as we know, has flaws, and I think Sam Darnold will hopefully be able to exploit those. I like Jake Tonjes, as we talked about. FanDuel, expensive. DraftKings, very cheap. So whether you're looking at him as a tight end or even as a flex, the game that Kittle missed in Week 16, he had 9 catches. Week 17, he had 9 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. He's going to be involved. Seattle's defense, the biggest flaw that they've had the majority of the season, has been defending tight ends. So it's a great opportunity and a guy Brock Purdy will lean on. I believe Kittle in the game where they struggled offensively, 49ers, Kittle still had 5 catches early in that game. And so that was at less than 100%. So I think Jake Tonjes on DraftKings is almost a free space.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right, let's take a quick break here and talk about the rest of the slate and some other players. And if Nico Collins is out, what does that mean? I'll tell you after this on FFT Express. All right, Nico Collins missing practice in the concussion protocol. Patriots have been so good against wide receivers. Otherwise, I think, I'd be more excited about starting these, whether it's Hutchinson or Higgins or even Schultz at tight end. But look, I mean, I can't say that Christian Gonzalez is going to play for the Patriots, but it's possible. He was limited in practice. He's also in the concussion protocol. Are there any Texans players that you like? And, how about Woody Marks? I mean, Woody Marks is an every down, is of often used back, right? Like kind of a workhorse right now, although Jawar Jordan could be back. So we didn't talk about him, I don't think, at all on the show we just did.
Mark's coming off his first 100-yard game of his career,
Yeah.
So best performance of the season at the right time. Not involved in the passing game. We'll see if that changes against New England. I think when New England's healthy, which they are getting healthier, as we know the last couple of weeks, defensively against the run, tough to say that Woody Marks is a great play. He's certainly a good option if you're looking to go cheap at the position with the idea that he's going to get a lot of work. The one guy that you didn't mention is Christian Kirk, coming off of his big game for the Texans. So you can probably pivot to any of these other guys in terms of Hutchinson, as Dave alluded to in the full-length episode. He performed well when Nico Collins was out earlier this season. Jaden Higgins has certainly had some big plays and big moments. Jalen Knoll is going to have an opportunity if there is no Nico as well. I would just probably play it safe because Kirk is also relatively cheap. Remember, when these pricing comes out, they do not usually take into account these type of injuries,
Right.
So they take into account the Kittle injury. They don't take into account, Nico Collins playing, not playing. So Kirk, while his numbers bumped up after what he just did, he's not going to be as expensive because they're expecting Nico, when they did the pricing, to play. So I think, Kirk is a good pivot play. Remember, anytime you get these type of situations, something to look at is guys going into free agency and getting spotlight performances, so could be a big game for Stephon Diggs, if this may be the last game that he plays,
Bench game.
Right. He did well against Houston when he was with, I'm sorry, take that back. I was going to say something incorrect. But Kirk is somebody I think that's, worth a look based on how CJ Stroud leaned on him. And he will almost certainly avoid Christian Gonzalez, whether Nico plays or not.
All right. You want to give not necessarily a lineup, but maybe some guidance and what you've done with some of your lineups?
Yeah, so I think, easy to sort of play off either side, Chicago, Rams, so if you go Stafford and any of the receivers, you can come back with Loveland or Burden or Swift. You go Williams and Loveland or Burden, you come back with, Puka or Devontae. Colby Parkinson, I think, is in play, and didn't have a lot of targets last week, but still scored a touchdown. So I think any of those scenarios, work. You want to look different. You want to be different at quarterback. I think Sam Darnold is worth taking a chance on because you stack him with JSN. You come back with Tonjes. You can come back with McCaffrey if you want to. I would probably avoid Jennings, but we know he finds a way to get into the end zone almost on a weekly basis, whether he's catching one or throwing one. So there's, plays there. If you look in the Denver Buffalo game, if you want to go Josh Allen, Khalil Shakir, we didn't even talk about him at all, coming off the game that he just had. He'll avoid Patrick Surtain almost certainly. So, that's an opportunity for him to maybe make some plays as well. I think both tight ends are in play. I'd lean Kincaid over Knox, but we know that, Buffalo is going to have to be creative without Gabe Davis and Shavers. I would avoid Brandon Cooks, but he's going to be cheap. But if you want to go Josh Allen, you can come back with, as I said on the full-length episode, I think all of Denver's wide receivers are worth a look, especially if you want to avoid Sutton. You may get a big game out of Marvin Mims, out of Pat Bryant, out of Torrey Franklin. There's just so many different ways you can go with that team there. And then for the Patriots offense, to me, Stevenson is the guy I would look at because he's just been so involved in the passing game, just making plays. And so, again, you're using him at the running back position, but he's gotten in the end zone. He's catching passes, so if they're playing with the lead, expect to see a lot of probably Ramondre Stevenson. So I'd play him over Trayvon Henderson. And there's always, the big player too from a Kayshon Boutte or certainly Hunter Henry with what he's done down the stretch is worth a look. Also, just so many different ways you can go, even though there's only 4 games.
I'll give you guys a couple lineups. You probably heard them on the full length show, but I'll give them anyway. FanDuel, Caleb. For me, it's Caleb Williams, Blake Corum, and RJ Harvey. Puka Nacua, Cortland Sutton, and Ricky Pearsall. My flex will be Luther Burden. Jake Tonjes at tight end. Patriots DSD.
What's your pivot if Pearsall's out?
Oh, good question. Let's see. 6,000. Let's take Pearsall out and put Burden at receiver. And I'll tell you in 1 minute. And then we're going to go with Odunze, Travion Henderson, Demarcus Robinson, Christian Kirk, probably Colson Loveland.
Makes sense.
Yeah. DraftKings lineup is more studs and duds. With DraftKings, I have Xavier Hutchinson, Jake Tonjes, who's kind of a stud on FanDuel, but as Jamie mentioned, more of a dud in terms of pricing on DraftKings. He's the 7th most expensive tight end. Can you just show me the damn lineup? Okay. Anyway, it's Stafford, RJ Harvey, and Charbonnet instead of Corum. It's Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams with Xavier Hutchinson. I have James Cook as my flex. So you want to make him the starting running back and make Charbonnet the flex, whatever. Jake Tonjes at tight end and the 49ers DST. But using Tonjes and the 49ers and Xavier Hutchinson gives you the opportunity to stack Stafford, Adams, and Puka against a bad pass defense and get RJ Harvey in there and get Zach Charbonnet in there as well. All right. That's it for FFT Express. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, everybody. See ya.